forms. This is also the time to add the pouring scaffold and lifting eyes to the side forms when they are lying face sheet down. Make sure the lengths and breaks in the scaffold planks, toe boards, mid-rails, and top rails match the form cycling plan. Identify the location of the pipe braces so they will line up with the wind beams when the side panels are set in place on the soffits. Attach EFCO telescoping pipe braces near the top of the side form panel assembly with the pipe braces telescoped collapsed. As the panels are later lifted into place, the telescoped pipe brace will be extended to attach to the wind beam. Add the lifting eyes to the top edge of the panels, at least 2 lifting eyes to set the assembly on the soffit. Step 4. Set the assembled plate girder side forms in place and attach the forms to the outside angle corners secured to the soffit panels. While the form is hanging from the crane, extend the pipe braces attached to the form and connect to the wind beam to secure the forms in a vertical position. Step 5. Assemble the second side of the cap form following the same steps as the first side. Step 6. Attach any additional soffit forms not supported by an assembly structure. Step 7. Install the cap end forms to the side forms using outside angle corners. For the end forms, if chamfer is required, add it prior to setting the end forms in place, along with vertical outside angle corners. Step 8. Install the lifting eyes for lifting the total cap form assembly to the pier columns and remove temporary lifting eyes used in Step 3. Adding top yokes at the 4-point lifting eye locations is a must. The additional top yokes can be installed later. Attach insert angles to the soffit forms as required to accept a plywood closure around column. The plywood will be applied when the cap form is in place on the columns. Add a lower level of scaffolding to the lower edge of the cap form setup if required for your project. This should complete the ground level assembly of your EFCO plate girder cap forms. Method 2 appears to be similar to Method 1, but there are several important differences. Method 2 has hinged soffit forms. To permit the soffits to swing out of the way, the wind beams and pipe braces are moved to the top of the form. Method 2 allows the cap form to be stripped as one complete unit or one crane pick. Method 1 requires 2 crane picks. With Method 2, the cap forms can be flown in with the rebar assembly inside or the rebar assembly preset on the columns ahead of time. Step 1. Assemble the super stud support structure with extensions for bracing the side forms. Step 2. Pre-assemble EFCO plate girder side forms using the same procedure as Assembly Method 1. Step 3. Arrange the soffit forms face down on a level surface. Assemble soffit forms with hinges on one edge and outside angle corners on the opposite edge. Step 4. Turn the soffit forms over and set them on the support frame. Step 5. Set the pre-assembled EFCO plate girder side forms on the super stud support frame and bolt to the soffit forms. Use temporary pipe braces connecting the support frame extensions to the top edge of the plate girder side form. Step 6. Place wind beams over the top of the cap setup and attach the permanent pipe braces from the wind beams to the lower edge of the side form panels. At this point, remove the temporary pipe braces. Step 7. Add the required top yokes and 4 lifting eyes to the top edge of the plate girder side form. Step 8. Complete the setup adding appropriate scaffolding, cap end forms, grade strips, insert angles for a plywood soffit around the columns, and oil the face sheets with a form release agent. To complete the hanging scaffold, it will be necessary to remove the extensions from the support structure. The plywood will be added to the setup after the cap is set in place. Assembling a hammerhead cap is very similar to Method 1. The major difference comes with the requirement to strip a hammerhead cap by splitting it in the center of the cap form and stripping in 2 halves. It is standard practice to build a complete cap form setup on the ground and set the hammerhead assembly in one piece. Hammerhead caps appear to be similar to multiple stem caps, but they may have special forming concerns. If the stem is narrow or the cap is super elevated, a tip-over hazard may be present. Even if the cap is level and symmetrical, the concrete placement method may cause a tip-over condition. The unbalanced loads are resisted with guy wires extending from the far corners of the form down to the pier or pier footing. There are conditions when additional restraints are also required. See EFCO erection drawings for specific instructions. Warning: carefully review the drawings prepared by EFCO engineers for the Hammerhead Pier. There may be instructions for preventing tip-over hazards. Failure to follow the drawings may result in serious injury or death. Because most of the basic assembly steps for a Hammerhead cap form are the same as Method 1, we will not repeat them. The most used setup for Hammerhead cap calls for wind beams under the cap form. This gives us the opportunity to share EFCO's 4 methods to support the cap form soffits. The geometry of your cap to be formed will always, of course, dictate the best EFCO methods to use, as there are hundreds of choices to choose from. The soffit support methods are: 1. For flat soffits, the outside angle corner to connect the side forms to the soffit. 2. For flat soffits, a hinged connection, EFCO plate girder side forms to soffit. This was part of Method 2. 3. For repetitious sloping soffits, use a factory pre-drilled plate girder form panel bolted through the EFCO exposed Z-ribs. 4. For sloping soffits with varying slope angles, use bottom yokes to support adjusting screw jacks. Because Hammerhead caps most often have sloping soffits, we will include the adjustable sloping soffit and push-in end caps with Assembly Method 3. For the sloping soffits with varying slope angles, instead of assembling soffits first and adding EFCO plate girder side form second, as in Assembly Method 1, follow these steps. Step 1. Cap form support structure adding wind beam. Step 2. Pre-assemble EFCO plate girder side forms the same as Assembly Method 1. Step 3. Set plate girders on the wind beams using pipe braces to stabilize setup. Step 4. Repeat Step 3 for second side of cap forms. Step 5. Add bottom yokes to the underside of plate girder side panels. Step 6. Pre-assemble soffit forms adding soffit adjusting screw jacks. Step 7. Assemble soffit panel assembly into the cap form setup. Step 8. Assemble end form into setup. Step 9. As with methods 1 and 2, complete the setups with all accessories required for the setup built into the setup on the ground prior to lifting into position on the columns. Cycling Method 1. After concrete has reached sufficient strength, the cap form will be stripped in 2 pieces. One piece with the soffit attached to a side form with the wind beam, and the other piece is the opposite side form with top yokes. Step 1. Install blocks of wood between the top yokes and the cap. Step 2. Secure both sides by anchoring top yokes to the top of the cap. Step 3. Attach the plate girder side form to the crane. Snug the lines slightly. Step 4. Unbolt the soffit from the side opposite the crane. At the wind beam, unbolt and shorten the pipe brace from this side. Step 5. Unbolt the crane-held form from the top yokes. Step 6. Carefully move this side away from the cap. The side and soffit will rotate as the form is lowered because the center of gravity of the L-shaped form assembly is not under the hook at the beginning of the move. Step 7. Land the side with the soffit on the temporary support frame and release from crane. Step 8. Attach the other side to the crane. Step 9. Release anchors to the top yokes holding the side form in place. Move the side form to the temporary support frame, landing the side form on the soffit outside angle corner. Step 10. While attached to the crane, bolt the side form to the soffit and reattach the pipe brace to the wind beam. Step 11. Attach top yokes at lifting eyes. Clean and oil forms. Step 12. Pick the form with the crane and set it on support brackets set ahead on the next pier to be poured. Step 13. Remove the top yokes. Step 14. Lift the rebar cage and set in the form. Step 15. Install the top yokes, wood closures, bearing seats, and anchor bolts if required. Step 16. Pour the cap. Cycling Method 2. After concrete has reached sufficient strength, the cap form will be stripped in one piece. Step 1. Set pre-tied rebar cage on the temporary support frame. Step 2. Install blocks of wood between the wind beams and the cap. Step 3. Secure the cap form to the crane. Step 4. With caution, unbolt the soffit form from the side form at the outside angle corner, which is opposite to the hinge. Carefully swing the soffit form away from the concrete. A holding device similar to a come-along is recommended. Step 5. Break away the side forms from the concrete using the wind beam pipe braces. Step 6. With the crane, lift the form up and away from the cap. Land the form on temporary supports. While still attached to the crane, clean and oil the form. Step 7. Lift the form and land the form over the rebar cage on the temporary support frame. Step 8. Replumb the side forms with the wind beam pipe braces. Pull the soffit form back up and secure by bolting to the side form. Step 9. Pick up the form and land on pre-placed support brackets on the next pier to be poured. Step 10. Install wood closures, bearing seats, and anchor bolts if required. Step 11. Pour. Cycling Method 3. After the concrete has reached sufficient strength, the cap form will be stripped by splitting the cap form into two halves, called left end form and the right end form. Step 1. Install blocks of wood between the top yokes and the top of the cap. Step 2. Remove support brackets and wood closures while standing on the form's hanging scaffold. Remove ties. Step 3. Attach the crane to the left end form. Slightly tension the lines. Remove top yokes over the left end form. Set top yokes on the pour scaffold and secure with wire. Step 4. Unbolt the center joint that connects the left end form to the right end form. Step 5. Swing the left end form away from the cap. Land the left end form on the temporary support frame. Step 6. Repeat steps 2 through 5 for the right end form. Step 7. Release the crane. Step 8. Clean and oil the form. Step 9. Set the pre-tied rebar cage into the form. Step 10. Attach the top yokes. Step 11. Attach the crane, pick the form, and land it on pre-placed brackets on the next pier to be formed. Step 12. Install wood closures, bearing seats, and anchor bolts if required. Step 13. Pour. For a complete presentation of the EFCO plate girder forming system, including additional applications like box culverts, retaining walls, bridge abutments, stadiums, commercial building cores and shafts, power plants, and more, see EFCO's plate girder catalog. With EFCO's plate girder form system, you will be able to accomplish most of the form assembly operations on the ground, where it is quicker, safer, and reduces labor costs. It is EFCO's form equipment designs that deliver the best value and lowest in-place concrete costs. Please call directly to your EFCO wraparound support team when you need them. Thank you, and we are also available and want to help you on your next project.